3 boat horror stories that'll make you think twice before setting sail, right? Story number 1. The air hung heavy with the scent of cypress and swamp water as Smith Anthony pushed off from the rickety wooden dock, his small boat gliding into the inky expanse of Lake Pontchartrain. The moon was a sliver, barely piercing the thick Louisiana night, making the water ahead seem like a bottomless abyss. Anthony, a seasoned fisherman used to the lake's moods, felt a prickle of unease crawl up his spine. It wasn't just the oppressive silence punctuated by the eerie croaking of unseen frogs. There was something else, a presence he couldn't quite grasp, lurking just beyond his senses. He rowed deeper, drawn by an inexplicable tug, his oars creaking like old bones. The water, usually alive with the shimmer of plankton, lay dead still, reflecting the starless sky like a black mirror. He stopped, letting the silence press in. Suddenly, a low moan broke the stillness, a sound that sent shivers down his spine. It came from somewhere ahead, drifting across the water like a banshee's wail. Anthony, heart hammering against his ribs, strained to see through the darkness. Then he saw her. A figure materialized from the mist, floating effortlessly towards his boat. Her hair, a tangled mass of seaweed, clung to her face, obscuring it in shadows. Her skin, the color of moonlit bone, stretched taut over an emaciated frame, and her eyes, 2 glowing orbs sunk deep in their sockets, burned with an unnatural light. He wanted to scream, to turn and row back with all his might, but the oars felt glued to his hands, his body paralyzed by an icy fear. The woman, a creature of the swamp itself, drew closer, her tattered white dress billowing like a shroud in the non-existent wind. "Help me!" she rasped, her voice like nails scraping on a chalkboard. Anthony's throat constricted. "Help me!" she repeated, her voice gaining an edge of desperation. "Please!" He wanted to offer help, to be the human who answered a plea in the night. But something in her eyes, a bottomless hunger that mirrored the depths of the lake, sent shivers down his spine. This was no lost soul, no innocent seeking aid. With a burst of strength, he broke free from his paralysis, grabbing an oar and thrusting it towards the woman. She let out a hiss that echoed across the water, a sound that ripped through the night and tore at his sanity. We continue the stories, but before that, please like this video and subscribe my channel for more horror stories. "You will pay," she spat, her voice contorted into a grotesque parody of human speech. "All of you will pay." Before Anthony could react, she lunged, her skeletal hand shooting out with unnatural speed. Her fingers, like gnarled claws, latched onto his wrist. An icy fire shot up his arm, spreading like venom through his veins. He screamed, a sound swallowed by the vastness of the night as the woman's grip tightened, crushing his bones. He fought with the desperation of a drowning man, but it was futile. He was no match for this creature, this embodiment of the swamp's darkest secrets. He watched, helpless, as her other hand reached for his face. Just as her fingers were about to touch him, a deafening roar split the night. A massive shape, black against the starless sky, emerged from the depths. It was a gator, the biggest Anthony had ever seen, its eyes burning like malevolent embers. The woman shrieked, a sound that curdled Anthony's blood and released him. She stumbled back, her eyes widening in terror as the gator lunged. Its jaws, a maw of serrated teeth, clamped down on her upper body, snapping bone and flesh with a sickening crunch. Anthony watched, frozen in horrified fascination, as the gator submerged, dragging the woman's screaming form into the black depths. The water churned for a moment, then stilled, as if nothing had ever disturbed its surface. He sat there, gasping for breath, the echo of her screams still ringing in his ears. His body ached, his arm throbbed, but he was alive. He had been spared, but at what cost? Slowly, he began to row back, the weight of the night pressing down on him. He knew he would never forget what he had seen, the woman's unearthly beauty and the gator's monstrous hunger. He had glimpsed into the heart of the swamp, a place where darkness reigned and human life meant nothing. He reached the dock, his limbs trembling, and collapsed onto the weathered wood. He stared out at the water, now a shimmering expanse under the pale light of dawn. The surface was calm, but he knew what lurked beneath, a world of nightmares just waiting to be awakened. He had returned, yes, but a part of him would forever remain in that dark, watery abyss. Story number 2. Jackson pushed off the rotting dock, the rickety skiff groaning under his weight. The moon, a sliver of bone in the ink-black sky, offered little illumination, casting the vastness of Lake Michigan in an unsettling cloak of shadows. The air, thick with the dampness of approaching rain, tasted of salt and something far older, something that sent shivers down his spine. He gripped the oars, their worn wood cold and slick in his clammy hands. He'd been warned not to go out on the lake after dark. Whispers of drowned sailors, of vengeful spirits trapped in the watery depths, were like barnacles clinging to the hulls of the old fishing boats that lined the shore. But Jackson, fueled by a reckless mix of adolescent bravado and a potent shot of his grandpa's moonshine, scoffed at the superstitions. He rowed deeper, the rhythmic creak of the oars the only sound in the suffocating silence. The water around him lay like a dark mirror, reflecting the few distorted stars that dared to peek through the heavy cloud cover. It was then, somewhere out there in the vast expanse, that he heard it. A whisper. Not of wind through reeds, not of waves lapping against the hull, but of something far older, far more insidious. A voice that slithered into his ear like a cold, wet snake, speaking in a tongue he didn't understand, yet somehow knew. "Welcome, Jackson," it rasped, the words sending icy tendrils down his throat. He spun around, heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. But there was nothing to see, only the endless, star-dusted black. He gripped the oars tighter, knuckles white, the voice now an insistent murmur, weaving tales of forgotten tragedies, of ships swallowed whole by the lake's hungry belly. Then he saw it, a flicker of movement in the water, just beyond the reach of the moon's meager light. A shape, shifting, coalescing into something vaguely human but wrong. A face formed, pale and bloated, eyes like seaweed-choked marbles, staring sightlessly into his soul. A skeletal hand, dripping with lake water, and something that looked suspiciously like pond scum, reached out towards him. Jackson screamed, a primal, terrified sound that echoed across the lake and was swallowed whole by the night. He scrambled backwards, oars clattering in the bottom of the boat. The figure, a drowned sailor risen from the watery grave with a vengeance, lurched closer, its hand outstretched, fingers like gnarled branches clawing at the air. Panic choked Jackson's throat. He stumbled, falling against the edge of the boat. The skiff rocked violently, pitching him overboard. The icy water engulfed him, its bitter kiss silencing his scream. He sank, the weight of the lake pressing against his chest, the darkness closing in. He fought, clawed towards the surface, his lungs screaming for air. But the water, heavy with the weight of secrets and sins, held him fast. He saw the boat, a small, fragile speck in the vastness above, the drowned sailor leaning over the edge, grinning a skull-like grin. Then, the voice. It wasn't whispering anymore. It was a cacophony, a chorus of the damned echoing through the water, laughing at his struggle, urging him down, down into the cold embrace. He gave up. His limbs grew heavy, his vision blurring. He was one with the lake now, a part of its dark heart. The whispers surrounded him, a lullaby sung by the dead, promising an eternity of secrets and silence. Suddenly, light. A warm, golden light pierced through the darkness, cutting through the cold water like a ray of hope. He saw his grandpa, a weathered face etched with worry and love, diving into the lake after him. Strong arms pulled him upwards, dragging him back to the surface, back to the world of the living. Grandpa coughed, spitting out lake water, his eyes never leaving Jackson's face. "Don't you ever do that again, you fool," he rasped. Jackson clung to his grandpa, shivering uncontrollably, the whispers still echoing in his ears, a faint, chilling reminder of what he'd glimpsed in the depths. He knew he wouldn't forget the night the water whispered secrets, the night he stared into the face of his own watery grave. He never went back on the lake after dark, but sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind whispers through the trees and the moon casts long, eerie shadows across the water, he swears he can still hear it. The chorus of the damned, laughing in the darkness, waiting for another soul to claim.